Hello, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to the group. This is your Nature Journal Educators Forum. Um, Focus. All right. Hey, welcome, everybody. This is your Nature Journal Educators Forum with your host team, John Muir Laws and Billy Joe Reed and Avea, the Mad Botanist Moore. We're really, really happy to be. It's okay. You can come on in. Give mommy a hug. Um, so we're really, really happy to be here with all of you today. And thank you for being part of this community and part of this conversation. Today, we wanted to have a discussion about the intersection of nature journaling and mindfulness and how we can bring those practices together. And there's a lot of people in our community who have lots of experience with this. Um, and I thought that maybe what we could do is just start with perhaps just we could start with some mindful breathing ourselves. Um, and then from there, drop into a discussion of these things. Um, and so, is there, by any chance, I'm going to look over at my uh, gallery view here. Oh, there's everybody. Um, is there anybody here who is a meditation teacher that might be able to lead us in a sort of a guided meditation and some mindful breathing? And I see Star raised your hand. Would you be comfortable doing that with us to get us started, Star?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Wonderful. It's really
Lovely.
good to see you again. So I'm going to
Thank
turn off my screen so we can focus on you. And what we're going to
Okay.
do, folks, is well, you'll find out.
Well, welcome everyone. And what a delight and really nice surprise to find out we're going to talk about mindfulness today. So, probably everybody's familiar with what mindfulness is. Um, but let's just start by centering on our body and then going to our breath. So, if we center on our body, first we just bring our awareness to ourself, our physical self. We can spend a lot of our time walking someplace out here outside of ourselves, our brains out there, but come home to our body and start with your feet and place them on the floor, both so you feel the floor beneath you, and beneath the floor, you feel Mother Earth really coming into contact, feeling that connection, and then letting your mind take you right up through your legs until you feel the seat of your chair and the solidity of that, knowing you are held. And then just scan your upper body, in particular your arms and your hands, to make sure that they're comfortable. Maybe scoot your shoulders up high around your ears and let them drop. And let your head go from side to side and come back to a central position. And just briefly scanning your body one more time now that you're a bit more in your body, and see if there's any place of discomfort, anything you'd like to adjust. And now we'll turn our attention to the breath, watching it flow in and out. No need to change it at all, just holding our attention there. And this is a great anchor. As we anchor in our breath, watching it flow in and out, know that everything is well, that we're at peace. And let our hearts be full of gratitude for this moment, for this good company, for our relationship with the planet, and for all of our aspirations that we bring to this time that we're going to share together. And if at any time during our time together we feel anxious or distracted, simply come back and anchor ourselves in the breath. And that will lead you to the state of awareness that we refer to as mindfulness. It is centered, it is peaceful, and it accepts the emotions and the thoughts that flow through us with ease. And when you feel ready, simply deepen your breath and come back to this beautiful community and look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Star. It always amazes me what a difference that makes, and realize that that feeling is available to me in every moment, and how seldom I go there. What a gift. How long have you been a teacher of mindfulness and meditation practices?
Well, I ordained with Thich Nhat Hanh in 2003. So that long. Yeah. And for me, it was life changing, really, truly life changing. Sometimes people ask, why do you do this? And I say, because I got my life back, really. It's it's very easy to live outside of yourself a lot of the time. And mindfulness practice is a way of entering this moment, this time with the person you're with in complete awareness. So I think I was very much kind of a very busy, striving, helpful person, probably, but always someplace else than where I was. So it's if it if it clicks, it's an amazing practice. And the breath is a great place to anchor ourselves because we always have our breath. When we don't have our breath, we're not going to have to worry about it. But we do always have our breath with us. And sometimes people who are learning meditation or mindfulness practice will say, why so much emphasis on the breath? And I say, because, when you're on the operating table, you still have your breath. And as long as you have your breath, it is a great place to center yourself. And there are all kinds of other things to use. You can chant, you can use bells. I spend a lot of time with my bell.
Could we hear its tone?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So there are lots of ways to go about meditation. Guided meditations are very helpful if your mind is very discursive and you have a hard time with your thoughts. guided meditations are really helpful. Um, but really, the fundamental practice, if you were going to be choosing a practice, I think is to work with your breath.
Yeah.
But other people may have other ideas, and I'd love to hear those too.
And do you how uh, how do you find the practice of, if you don't mind, I'd love to just bounce a few questions off
Hi.
you more, because what an incredible um, resource to sort of take advantage of your experience and wisdom. Um, what are your thoughts about sort of the intersection of mindfulness and nature journaling?
Yeah. Well, I think of my actually, some people in this group probably know that I'm writing a kind of a handbook on this now, and actually the publisher has asked for the text next week, so sooner rather than later, you will have this. But I really think that mindfulness is essential both, for scientific reason as well as for your own just personal well-being. So, I think I mean, I don't know a lot of scientists, but I think any good scientist would say that they have to be mindful about what they're doing to accomplish what they want to accomplish. You know, you have to bring full awareness to any experiment that you're doing, or even if you're writing, you know, you have to be fully aware of what it is you're proposing and arguing. And yeah, so I think a mindfulness practice for anybody who's enjoying nature journaling is really key. Um, that stepping out of what, I mean, say we're going to go for a walk, and I have a preserve at one end of my street, and I have a park, a city park, at 2 blocks away. I am so lucky where I live. So I can walk out my door and spend time in nature really easily. And that's a great thing. One of the things that I have to watch, however, is that when I take that walk to the preserve or to the city park, that I'm not bringing my whole day with me into the woods, because nothing's going to interfere with my experience more than if I'm thinking about, oh, the last phone call I got, or somebody who's dying, or something that just happened that was upsetting. There's so much that goes on. If I take that all that with me, I've interrupted right away the possibilities of what I could experience in the natural world. So, Thich Nhat Hanh used to tell us, start your meditation on the way to the meditation hall. And that's exactly the way I think
Mm.
about it when I go out to the park or to the preserve. I think with this, as I step out the door, I do it mindfully. Just like it is walking meditation. It's just that I walk at a normal speed. People aren't, you know, I don't want to draw crazy attention to myself by walking very slowly, but you can be absolutely mindful going at a normal pace. So stepping out the door, I have my gear and I walk in very deliberate way, touching the earth, aware that I'm touching the earth. And I usually say a mantra of some sort, which might be in, out, just with my breath. Or it could be one that I really like is, and I don't speak French really, but I love oui, merci, because it's so positive. It's yes, thank you, but the oui, merci, which
Oh,
uh,
I like that.
I love that one. So, y- you set the intention that you're going to do this activity in complete awareness, complete presence.
Yeah.
And you kind of package up everything else that's going on in your life and you leave that home. Wrap it up in a box and leave it home. And this is the time to just be with the earth.
Well,
So,
sometimes, and with when I have this idea, like if I'm not concerned and been thinking about all these things, then that means I don't care. And so to
yeah,
be someone who cares, that like
yeah,
I need to like be listening to the radio and kind of getting more, more
Yeah.
anxious. But
Yeah.
that perhaps there's a time for that kind of attention and doing that deliberately. But if I carry that with me when I'm out next to a wildflower, then I can't be next to that wildflower.
No, you don't even see it. You don't even see it. No. Yeah. So I am looking at I'm looking at my own material because I have a little process I was going to share with you, which you might enjoy. Um, okay.
And for folks, just
This,
to sort of for flow of what we're going to be doing, Star is going to share this thought with us. And then we're going to just break out into some very, very small breakout rooms for you to share your initial thoughts about kind of the intersection of nature journaling and mindfulness um, with somebody else and kind of bounce those ideas around. And then we'll come back together into a larger group for um, a larger group discussion. But so shortly we're going to be in those breakout rooms having those conversations. Then coming back together here. But Star, you were
yeah, that's wonderful. I can't wait to hear what everybody has to say. But I did kind of break down my own process to share with people in this handbook that I'm working on, so I can tell you what it consists of briefly, and then maybe that'll give people something to bounce around a little bit. Um, so I delineate it this way. First step is to stop, which is maybe the hardest part, but to stop whatever you're doing, whatever you're thinking, it's just stop before you take any steps anyplace. Second, set your intention. So this is, why are you doing what you're doing today? When you go nature journaling, do you have something specific in mind? And it could be something about you. Maybe you need to decompress, or maybe you just need a timeout, or it could be something very specific you're looking for. I just saw a Cooper's hawk out in my backyard the other day, so I might go looking for him again, that kind of thing. So it could be specific, it could be general, but you want to set an intention. At least I'd like to do that. And then meditation, and that is what we just talked about. Then for me, the meditation is the walking meditation as I go to where I'm going. And then to distinguish it a little bit, the next phase might be, or for me, is contemplation. And that's when I found what I want to look at. Okay, so say I decide I want to look at this amazing tree. So I'm going to find a place to sit, and then I go through my senses and I try to address the tree with each sense being present to my impressions with each of my senses. And then the next step for me is called noting. And noting is when really you're deciding what you're going to journal about. You've taken all this in. What are you going to choose to record? And then investigating. So that you go deeper into what you've chosen. You contemplate it, you investigate it. Some of the investigating you might do when you get home. It might be research later. And then reflecting. So that's, you finished your scribbling. Finish scribbling on your nature journal, whatever you're doing. And then you just sit again, don't immediately jump up, but sit again and reflect on the experience. Maybe is there something you want to return to? Maybe there are questions, those all important questions that come up for us when we're out. Maybe you see a hawk, but you don't know if it's a Cooper's hawk. So that's, write down your questions, this time of reflection. And it's it's also a transition, before to keep everything very mindful. And then the last step for me is to express gratitude, no matter what, no matter what I have run into or failed to run into, expressing gratitude. So those are the steps as I practice them. So maybe that gives people something to bounce around.
Oh, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
That's really fun.
Okay. Good.
Um, so let's this hearing kind of the articulation of your process gives me um, some really interesting starting points to think about how to incorporate this more intentionally into what I'm doing. Let's break out into some small group discussions, and what we're going to have is you'll be in a room with either two or three other people, and most of us will be with two people. And just to first just invite you to kind of greet the other person and thank them for being here, and then share kind of how your kind of head and heart are kind of putting these ideas together and what you're thinking about that. First, both initially kind of personally, and then also what are the implications for this for us as educators. Um, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking 15 minutes in that very small group. Um, if and see where um, discussion that discussion goes. Um, and then we'll see you back here in 15 minutes. And we're going to invite this into sort of a larger conversation with the group. Um, I like how you ended with gratitude. So let's also kind of add into the process that before we come back to the major room here, just to express your gratitude to the person that you've been sharing thoughts and ideas with, um, if that feels right to you. All right. Um, uh, Billy Joe and Nevaeh, any other thoughts or ideas before we jump into those discussions? We're good.
Just to repeat the prompt, we're greeting the other people, thanking them for being here, and then also sharing how our head and heart are putting together these ideas about mindfulness, both personally and as educators. Is that right? Excellent.
That's right. We'll see you soon. We're back. And what I wanted to do is that I thought that STAR's process of was actually just being so metacognitively powerful. And so let's just try so I'm going to jump to her reflection part where now that we're out of that room in a conversation with somebody, just sort of sit for a moment and see what ideas or thoughts right now are rising to the top for you, and just write a few of those things down, and um, just sort of see what is kind of these things is gelling for you. And then in a moment, anybody who would like to sort of start us off on our conversation, all you have to do is you can physically raise your hand like this. Um, you can also just use the raise hand button. If you have a raise hand button, that's a little bit easier for us because then we automatically see that. But I know on some devices that can be hard to find. Um, and what we'll do is let's just discuss what for you is, if we were to really take this seriously as individuals or in our community as teachers, what would that look like? Or what other thoughts does this really bring to the front for you? let's just take about 30 more seconds, and then we'd love to hear what's kind of rising to the surface as significant for folks. All right. Would anybody like to share um, uh, what is at the top of your mind to kind of get this ball rolling? Great. Let's start with Matthew, and if you would like to be um, um, oh, I see the hand went down. Let's start
Yeah,
with
you had
oh,
unmuted. I figured I would not keep it up, but I just wanted to just get us started if I could. Thinking about the breath as being a centerpiece for mindfulness and meditation. I like to think of acts of creation and experience as kind of metaphorically through the breath, where we breathe in, we take in what we see, what we sense, what we feel, and then specifically through nature journaling, our exhale is on the page through the pen. So you bring in, you collect all of this life force that's been given from everything around us, which we can be mindful of, and how we change that metabolically, cognitively, emotionally through our experience being in that place and in that time, and then exhale our life force onto the page, which can then give life to other observations, experiences, and emotions for viewers of the page.
Matthew, do you ever write poetry?
Not quite. More prosy.
Okay, it doesn't have to rhyme, but what you just said is really worthy of just playing with some of those words and creating poetry, prose, something around that. That is this idea of you're going to take it in, and then on the out breath. I love kind of this process of attention and creation, that tying that into the breath. I mean, that's what a powerful metaphor. I love that metaphor. And it also makes me think about how um, the process of yeah, uh, that's absolute gold.
Yeah, breathe it in, play with it, and see what happens on the page.
Beautiful. Let's bring Laramie in on the conversation.
Hi there.
There.
Matthew, that was just a beautiful perspective. I'm still thinking about it. Now I have to figure out what I was thinking about before.
I have a little diagram of it there. Okay.
Same.
Yes, there we go. All right. Yeah,
Wonderful.
Matthew, we're sketch noting your idea here.
Yeah, it was really, really powerful. So the thing that really came to my mind during our conversations and the moment of reflection was that there's kind of this individual mindfulness that is within the kind of the person, you, and then that mindfulness can radiate, especially with regard to nature journaling and the process of doing it and the mindset that goes into it. And then that kind of radiates into a community mindfulness. And there's almost a slight distinction between what it feels like to be mindful as a group, perhaps at an event or at a class or at a walk out together, versus what it's like to be mindful as an individual. And that there's this transition between the two that kind of breathes in and out that is really dynamic, both in terms of the actual educational events that I've been a part of, but also in terms of the relationships we have a number of people I know who have started nature journaling have noticed that it has empowered other people who wanted to do it but didn't feel like they could until they saw someone else doing it. And so kind of this internal drive and this internal peace influenced others, both who were not already into nature journaling and already into the practice, but also within actual events where people are there for that purpose. There is this breathing between the individual and the community in terms of how they're paying attention to the world around them and how they're communicating that. That's all I have to say.
The way you frame that as breathing between the individual and the community, I really like that. And then the inspiration that we have goes on to it is transformative. Like I got into this because as a little child, I saw somebody sit in the middle of a meadow painting and drawing wildflowers. And I thought, I really gotta get in on that. And then I found Claire Walker Leslie's book, Nature Drawing, A Tool for Learning. And it's like, oh, this is a thing? This is a thing? Right? Thank you for that thought. Sarah, we'd love to love to have your thoughts on this. Where does this take you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Cool. Yeah, this kind of ties in with what Lamry was saying. But I'm sure hers was way more eloquent than mine. But the first thing that kind of sprung to my mind when you said, "Oh, what would this look like if we took this really seriously as a community?" was that if we are including mindfulness in our sessions as nature journaling facilitators or educators, that perhaps there should be some sort of mindfulness group for educators, facilitators, and volunteers, because it is that thing of, unless we are practicing and taking care of ourselves, then can we really expect to be able to pass that on to our students or the people we are caring for, and other people within the community. Kind of like what you were saying, Jack, about, you saw Claire Walker Leslie's book and you wanted to get in on it. And if we don't have that ourselves, then can we really, are we kind of pouring from an empty cup, I come from a background of working in a few places in a very broken care system where there is very little support for people looking after others. People get so burnt out and so sick, and you lose really, really, really valuable people who are excellent carers in that way. So my first thought is always to kind of like, how can we take care of the carers, because otherwise everything falls apart. Yeah, that was it.
Actually, I'd love to bring Ivea in on that conversation, because she's done a lot in our community to really initiate a conversation about self-care and how do we do that. Ivea, what are your thoughts about the importance of, as we are being more present and mindful, both in our personal practice and as nature journaling educators? How does sort of the importance of self-care kind of come in on that for you, and what are some things that you've I know that you really intentionally try to provide opportunities for that?
It's actually really ironic that you should call me up here. One of my biggest inspirations within this community about self-care is Sarah here. Sarah's one of my Pencil Miles and Chill regulars, and she's the one who reminds me about self-care and about better, like, consistent and sustainable practices about looking out for ourselves, and has reminded me that sometimes I'll take on too much. And so Sarah is one of the wisest people I know, and has consistently reminded me about self-care, which I deeply appreciate. And so I guess what immediately comes to mind in terms of self-care are, like, I had this event recently where it was Kwanzaa for 7 days, or almost 7 days. And I liked that because the principles in there are a lot about taking assessment as a community and looking at yourself as a community and seeing where your signs of health are and where your signs of growth are. And the entire point of Kwanzaa, it's not necessarily about a holiday just to celebrate. It's literally about making a space where people can come together and talk about bigger ideas. And without getting overwhelmed, it's about one concept each day. For folks who might want to know the principles, the 7 principles are: first, unity, then self-determination, then collective work and responsibility, then cooperative economics, then purpose, then creativity, and then faith. And there might be different interpretations of each of those, but just having those and being able to think about them in terms of our personal lives and then in terms of community is really helpful. And so I think a big part of mindfulness is reminding us to keep doing it and staying aware of it and keep bringing it up. Because otherwise it can be easy to say, oh, that's something we'll do later. But if we're not reminding each other to do it, and if we're not creating space for that mindfulness, then it's going to be harder to practice. And that's another thing, is creating a space for these things. And so I know that with all of our lives, that can be really hard sometimes. Maybe we have circumstances at our homes or in our lives away from here where we don't have that opportunity to create space for ourselves, or where we get interrupted. And so I love the idea of having a group specifically for creating that space, because then when you say, oh, I've got this appointment to do this thing, then it's a little bit easier to protect that time. So those are some of my thoughts about it, if that's helpful.
This has been kind of an interesting little meta moment that's here. Larry got us started off thinking about how the individual inspires the community, and then Sarah, you're bringing up the importance of self-care, which then I brought Evea on, who was inspired to be thinking about self-care through you. In exactly the same way that Laramie was talking about. This is I love the way these thoughts are kind of connecting with each other and threading together. Laramie, do you want me to bring you back on to show you're good? Okay. Really interesting. Let's bring Marcia into this conversation as well. Sarah and Evea, is it all right if I kind of keep you on here in case you want to kind of continue to sort of share thoughts in here? So because what I find is, like, on Zoom, if like we're all sitting in a room and like one idea sort of sparks the next person, then that we're still in the room and we kind of continue to sort of share those thoughts and ideas. But in Zoom, once you're kind of off the screen, then we can't kind of, it's harder to kind of tie back into what other people were saying. And if the conversation sort of seems to be going other ways, then we can drop some people off of this. But I like to kind of get a cluster of us here into the conversation. Marcia, thank you so much for your ideas and thoughts. I've been
Thank you for doing this, everybody. And so it's interesting. So this brought up 2 or 3 things from all of you, Jack and Ivea and Sarah and Matthew. Where are you? I am challenged to go back and forth from the speaker view to the gallery view. I sometimes like to see everybody when I'm talking or looking or thinking. So I do switch back and forth. But I'll address Ivea right now. When you made the list, as an artist, I wanted to put creativity first, right? So I wrote down, shift the list. There's one for you for the chat. Shift the list. So like it could be a different one every month, right? So that there's not one on top and the bottom, right? Or one starts and back over. That was just a thought. Shift the list. And then I wanted to go back to Matthew. I'm looking, there you are. So I was blessed to be in a room with Matthew, and I was getting something to eat in the kitchen, looked over at the screen and went, oh, we're going into breakout rooms. And I'm like, should I go? Should I not go? Because I had just tuned in because I had like 5 meetings this morning. So I tuned in. And so I went, you know what? I have to go to the breakout room because if there's plenty of people, I'll go out, but sometimes I like to make sure that who's ever there has got somebody. Well, I got Matthew, and then I'm like, oh, Matthew, I didn't hear a word that was said yet. I just zoomed in, and and whatever. So he gave me the most beautiful lowdown on what was happening. Yeah. And then I had to come back on, either put it in the chat to say, I figured out the college that I was trying to tell him the name of, or think of it, Paul Smith College in upstate New York. Paul Smith College, very interesting college. So just if you want to make a note of that. So other than that, I probably could say something to everybody almost. I'm looking around. But anyway, I don't need to say anything more.
Well, thank you, Marcia. And it is really interesting to get in these small discussions and have a chance to share our thoughts and ideas with somebody else.
Rachel R is up next. They
Excellent.
just have their camera on, so I can't spotlight them. So that's the only thing.
Hi. Okay. I'll try to be as fast. So I was in a group with Valerie, and I'm so sorry if I butcher your name. Is it Thibault? Anyway, I think I'm pronouncing your name correct. So Valerie and Thibault, and we ended up kind of like going a little off the beaten path, but it loops back around to mindfulness, at least in my opinion. My notes are out of order, but I will try to get them in order. We ended up talking about like how to get kids into nature journaling despite, stress, whether it's school stress, life stress, but also feelings of vulnerability. And in brackets, I put i.e. cringe because it's one of those things, like, how do you get them to kind of focus and be in the moment and actually enjoy what they're doing? And she also talked about like getting her kids that she's teaching to write things that they're grateful for as well. And they did really well at that. And one thing that Thibault said that was really, really awesome was, like when a kid says to you, like, that's not cool, she's like, well, define what cool is. And to me, that's like getting them to kind of like, whoa, okay, how they have to now slow down and think and be like, okay, how do they define cool? Does it even mean anything? And I think that I want to add to that, to turn that then to go from that question to what's cool to you? Like, what makes you passionate? Not what you think your friend is going to think is cool, but like, what do you? And I think that really forces that introspection, that mindfulness of like, what's your feeling? What's your opinion on XYZ? Don't be depending on what you like. Don't be doing something essentially because you think somebody else will. You're not thinking of them. This is you.
Let me just.
But the same. Oh, sorry.
I wanted to make sure that I'm understanding correctly. So we're sort of in this case, if they're using, say, the term cool, like that's not cool. We're using their language to sort of, and then getting them to define that.
Yeah.
Clearly, and then to find where value is for them within that system, however they're defining it.
Yeah, but like for them as an individual.
Yes.
So now it's like you're forcing them to do that introspection where it's not about what mom and dad thinks is cool. It's not about what your friend thinks is. It's about you in this moment. Actually sit there and think about it, and be honest with yourself, and whatnot. But at the same time, Valerie also made a good point, which is the same thing that I had said before she came in, which was like, we want like teaching kind of that sincerity is good, but also like we don't want to force, I guess, people into a state of like vulnerability either. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's that modulating kind of like you're making sure like you want people, I guess, to be able to know that sincerity is a good thing, but you also want to teach them self-preservation at the same time. But yeah, we did get kind of like off the beaten track a little bit, but to me, that kind of like circles back around a little bit into that introspection, that mindfulness.
Yeah, I poked into a room where Sarah was also talking about that sort of you don't want to sort of set somebody up to like, let's be vulnerable if
Yeah,
you
yeah,
don't really have a safe space for that. Sarah, can I
exactly.
bring you back in on this? Because I think what you're talking about, PTSD, is also really relevant in this conversation.
Yeah. So I think what we were talking about was so I used to work in mental health for quite a while. And we talked a little bit about the difference between maybe tuning into nature as opposed to tuning into our bodies. Because oftentimes, if people are feeling unsafe in their own bodies, or if they're feeling gross, or if they're feeling, maybe if you're a teenager, you're just feeling like, oh, my body, I don't want anything to do with it, or or something like that, Rachel. You're talking about children. I think it's really hard to know, isn't it, what's going on for people. We've all got so much happening at home or perhaps in our work lives. I know I was in a group with really lovely Bethany, who had been doing work with nurses and doctors in the NHS in the UK, and providing some support for them through art classes after their busy shifts.
This was during COVID, right?
Yeah, in the middle of COVID, she was doing that as well.
Bethany, love
Yeah. We don't know what's going on for people, and I think it can be really tempting sometimes when you're involving mindfulness and you're out in nature. It speaks to us on a really deep level, doesn't it? And it can bring up all kinds of things. And it's really important, I think, as educators or facilitators, or however we want to label ourselves, to be equipped to make sure that we're having those conversations in a way that's safe and that's healing rather than harming. You don't want to kind of get everything out of the box and then be like, okay, bye, see you in 2 weeks.
Oh, look at the time.
Yeah, it's a really difficult balance to strike. And I definitely think, I know in the UK we have a few different trainings that are really helpful. Maybe there's things, similar things around the world. We have mental health first aid, and we also have the assist course, which is about how to speak to people who are potentially having suicidal thoughts, which I know sounds very extreme, but having worked in mental health,
that's so real.
I know how prevalent these things are. It's really quite shocking how many people, if you were to take an average of your class, you know, if you have like 10 people in a class and you're looking at like maybe half have got all kinds of things going on. So I do think if we are willing to go to emotional places with our students, then we have to be equipped to deal with that safely in a way that's not hurting them. Sorry, Rachel, was that what you were saying, my dear? I'm sorry, I've just gone off on one.
I think I see a really interesting connection and tie into that. Rachel, did you want to?
Yeah, so it's so funny because like when you guys first said the theme, I immediately started thinking like how I guess I do mindfulness, because I've had like issues with physical health and whatnot. And when exactly what Sarah said, I was like, oh, she's got it. She's put into words what I'm thinking, because I didn't know if it would be like, I guess like a legit form of mindfulness, I guess, the idea of focusing on nature instead of the body / the self. Because one thing that I like to do, it's kind of a bit of an internet joke at this point, but the idea of floor time, where like you just lay on the floor, you just lay there, you know, because the floor it's solid, it's grounding. But what I like to do during the summer, because I'm in a place with a horrible winter. So during the summer, I'll just get like one of like the lawn chair pads and I'll stick it on the grass and I'll just like lie on the grass and I'll watch the bugs go about their business. And I enjoy that. I watch their behavior and everything, and it's just that's what gets me to like chill out, you know, when I'm having like a moment where it's like, oh no, my brain's floating away, oh geez. So that's what I like to do. And even just, yeah, it's like the ground is grounding, which sounds a little silly, but I think it's true. But yeah, Sarah, thank you for putting into words what like I was kind of like, oh, does it make sense to me? Like, or will it make sense to others? Because the way I was taught mindfulness was about like, you need to be in your body at all times. And I'm like, bro, I don't want to be in my body at all times, because sometimes I'm like, yo, that's the seat of trauma. So I like to notice, what's going on around me. How is the sun filtering through the trees? How many squirrels did I see today? So on and so forth. But yes, thank you, sir.
Wow. This is so interesting. I was telling Sarah earlier that I remember I was teaching nature journaling in one of my workshops, and there's a person who was this big burly firefighter who was fire chief and had spent most of his life doing relief work in disaster areas. So if a hurricane blasts through an island, he's sent or an earthquake hits a village somewhere. And he's in the first crew that's sent to try to pull people out, kind of extrication and all this other sort of stuff. And so he said that his PTSD is all these little triggers. There'll be all these different things just that trigger that for him. But so for him, the only time that he can kind of switch off, like the situational awareness that he has to have in those emergency situations, is through nature journaling. So this big strapping fellow sitting down will plop himself down next to a wildflower and just get delicate. And I know that for what goes on physiologically, if you kind of can get yourself into a flow state, is that your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is part of your brain that regulates your sense of time, your sense of self, your identity, your awareness of, like, my leg's gone to sleep. So if you kind of get into that flower and then you kind of look up and like, that was just 15 minutes, but you've been there for an hour, and then you try to stand up and you can't, because your leg's totally asleep. That is nature journaling pulling you into flow and connecting you with that flower and allowing you to kind of get out of that headspace. I'm seeing. I like the idea of floor time. Rebecca, love to bring you in on this conversation. It's really good to see you.
Hi, can you hear me? It's good to see everyone.
And Sarah, is it okay if we kind of keep you on because some of your experience with therapy and these sorts of things may kind of be involved. We may kind of want to sort of pull you in more on that. If the conversation takes a different direction, then we can make you disappear. But I think that a lot of people were responding to what you were saying, and that was a useful idea. So a number of these, I'm seeing some people kind of nodding that there's maybe some ideas that will tie into this. So if we can kind of keep you here in the conversation. I'm sorry for interrupting you, Rebecca. Back to you.
I think what you were just saying, Jack, is a perfect segue into what I've been thinking about, because one of them is just what Sarah and Rachel have been talking about, with, mindfulness of our body. Then the second has to do with our experience of time. So the first thing is something that I think a lot about too, and that I bring up when I teach nature journaling classes, is that it's about the it is about the scientific thinking and observation, and that also takes mindfulness of what's outside of us in nature. But we can also and this is where it really differentiates from kind of the way that I originally learned nature journaling, field journaling, in more of an academic sense. But when we do it as nature journaling, we can also turn it inward and have mindfulness of ourselves, our emotions, what feelings are coming up for me right now, what thoughts are coming up for me, and that it can be hard for a lot of people to find ways of doing mindfulness from just sitting and meditating. That Rose and I were talking about this, and she might have more to say too. That paying attention to a leaf or a flower or whatever, and being mindful of that is just as deep a way of getting that sense of mindfulness, especially if you have, as you guys have been saying, some kind of trauma or other things that make it really hard to be in the body. Like, for example, I was telling Rosa, I have cystic fibrosis, which is a respiratory chronic illness. So when meditation, you focusing on the breath is really, really powerful. But sometimes it's not always the easiest thing because for most people, that's something that's very steady and reliable. So you can focus on that. I actually had a counselor once who I was talking about this challenge once, and she said, "Oh, I actually have a friend who's a Buddhist nun who has cystic fibrosis." And her friend actually sent me a letter saying basically, you don't have to start with focusing on your breath. You could choose anything to focus on. And that, yeah, that was really powerful for me. And so something that in one of a person who took my class before once said in feedback is that it was kind of like and this was for the restoration class specifically, but that it was kind of like going out to come back in to go out again in a deeper way, and this kind of like cycling reciprocal, like a deeper awareness of the world around us that kind of like open up space to go inward more, and then having that connection to yourself allows you to go back out in a deeper way. So it's like the out to in to out. And a sec, and I have another thing if you want to respond to anything I just said.
Just this idea of kind of going out, sort of Star, I think, mentioned that you could use the breath, you could use the bell, you could use a chant, you could use anything to sort of get you there. I think that sort of what your experience is really kind of shows why that's an important thing to be aware of, that there isn't sort of one path into this, and finding the way that works for you is good. And then I just wanted to also kind of tack a John Muir quote onto what you're saying about going out and going in, where John Muir says that I only went out for a walk and finally concluded to stay out till sundown. For going out, I found was really going in.
Love that quote. If I could actually say point 1.5, I just remembered the other thing. When we do, I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of, I've thought in the past too about how that can be applied inward as a kind of mindfulness also. Like, for example, and the kind of, something I mentioned in the chat earlier, something I think is really interesting, and I don't know if people have like written about this other places, but I think about all the time about how like the scientific way of thinking compares with like the Buddhist like kind of philosophy about like non-judgment and our perceptions, and like you kind of have to test your perceptions to know if they're true or not. And so that's kind of the scientific and the mindfulness. And I think so when we do, I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of, we can all, I've also been able to use that inside myself if I'm like having a bad day or something, like I'm not feeling good or like not having a good mental health day, being able to kind of take that non-judgmental step back instead of just panicking and being like, oh, I notice that this is what I'm feeling. I wonder why that's happening. It reminds me of this other time I experienced something similar. And so that's another way I think nature journaling directly can help with mindfulness and, you know, the social, emotional things. Okay, so if I could just say my last point, before I take up too much time, and I want to let Rosa talk.
No, this is gold. This is gold. As always, Rebecca, your insight is so rich. So please, you're not taking up time. You're dropping wisdom like it's hot. So you
Well,
go.
thank you. Okay, so that was point 1.5. The second point that I wanted to share, thinking about another thought that's occurred to me before with that kind of arose from my nature journal teaching is, we do nature journaling and we want to be mindful and in the present moment, and we don't want to, to be mindful, you don't want to be thinking too much about the past or the future. You want to just be in the present and the experience. But the other thing that I really want to help people get with nature journaling is having more of a sense of deep time thinking about the past and thinking about the future, like the far, far past and far, far future, and how we're connected to it. And at first, this seems like kind of like a contradiction, like how if you are thinking about the past and the future, then it's taking you out of the present moment. But I think maybe it's what I was just saying about like going out to go in to go back out. I think it's kind of like you can't really, something I think is really important for having a deeper sense of place and connection to nature, and that helps you develop a sense of stewardship, is learning about the history of that place where you've come from, being able to visualize the future, imagine the future that you want to see. I really recommend the book from called What Is to What If, that Sarah actually recommended to me. Thanks, Sarah. By Rob Hopkins. And like being able to have that imagination and visualization. But I feel like you can't really, either the past or the future, you can't really get to those in a really like tangible feeling way unless you can connect to the present moment. So it's kind of like connecting deeply to the present in nature. And that's what opened up the doors to have that connection to the past and connection to the future. And so sometimes in your mind, you will be time traveling to the past or the future mentally, but it's like getting there through mindfulness of the present moment. And that's how you kind of get to that sense of, it's a quote I love to share, is like being like, we're one link in the great chain of life. And this is our time right now. But I think, so even though it seems like kind of a paradox, I think you can get there through mindfulness and being in the present.
I love that little visualization of there is this whole rich history that is sort of burbling along in your past, and then you're this little moment, and your perceptions are there in that moment, and then it's going to the future is going to sort of morph out in front of it, and to be aware of this moment and the richness and the intricacy that got us here, and then the possibilities that are kind of extending out on the other side. Sort of the metaphysicist in me really likes that visualization. Thank you. Rosa, were you in conversation with Rebecca?
I absolutely
must have been a fun room.
It was an absolute delight to get to talk to Rebecca, and I'm excited to get to respond immediately after Rebecca so that we can kind of bring a little of what we had been talking about to the rest of you. I actually wanted to call something out from the chat, so I'll put on my Evea hat for just a second. Jim Van Geller mentioned the idea of pairing nature journal exercises and mindfulness. I don't remember exactly what he had said, but it's an idea that I know I've had, and it's an idea that I would love to offer to Star. I would love to see that in your book. I imagine that's already there. But I've been wondering how we can like make explicit some of the stuff that we're talking about explicitly here, where we can tell people, you know, if you need that moment of, you know, checking out, you know, you need a little dopamine, try curiosity. Here is a way to ask questions. You know, if you need to center, find a tree, and, you know, start asking questions of the tree. Jim mentioned that, and I wanted us to full speed ahead with that. I made little scribbles, and now they're hard to read because I haven't learned
when
to
that
sketch
happens.
note properly.
Like the thought is so good, you're trying to get it down quickly, and then you're later
Yes,
on.
no. Rebecca talked about what seems like a paradox between we want to stay present in this one present moment and what we also want, which is to be stewards of our environments, and that doing that requires that we understand the relationship of that place over history, right? Extending far into the past and far into the future. I belong to a group called The Long Now, which thinks about a 10,000 year present, which is a very crunchy, mind expanding kind of way to try to think. And what I wanted to say was that I don't see these as a paradox at all. That it's this kind of mindful presence that situates you in that flow of time. And I'm really just repeating what Rebecca said in slightly different words, but that she was saying that getting to that contemplation of the past or future through mindfulness can be like the doorway, right? And the thing that I love about that is that it takes out the part that I don't want to say you're fighting, but the thing that Buddhism can be a tool to help you with is that monkey mind where you're just, you know, you're thinking about your past and your future and your entanglements and stuff. And if you can get so present that you're just like sitting with a boulder or a tree, and then you can kind of skip and say, oh, wow, this tree is older than my mama. This tree is older than my great mama. You know, this tree was here before the Civil War, etc. Then you go outside of yourself to start experiencing a flow of time in a way that is more about the community, I guess, or just about things outside of you. And I think that's the thing that we're being warned against when we're told, like, stay present. Is that we're tangled up in our feelings. The other thing I wanted to point out was that mindfulness is one of the main components of a kind of therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy that Ivea and I have brought up more than once to the group. And I just appreciate again how completely intertwined the concepts are about trying to figure out what's really true and what you're actually experiencing, and sharing those together continues to seem like a very powerful idea to me.
The threads that we're connecting between these ideas are really, really interesting. That also this idea of there's paying attention to the moment, and then there's the stuff on either side of that. I think the danger is we spend so much time not paying any attention to any of it, right? And so, but being able to kind of come into this moment gives us the opportunity to find the links into the past and into the future. This reminds me of a poem, which I'm going to drop into the middle of this conversation, because Billy Collins was thinking about the same idea. And the poem is called This Much I Do Remember. And it's one of my favorite Billy Collins poems. It was after dinner. You were talking to me across the table about something or another, a greyhound you'd seen that day or a song you liked. And I was looking past you, over your bare shoulder at the 3 oranges, lying on the kitchen counter, next to the small electric bean grinder, which was also orange, and the orange and white cruets for vinegar and oil, all of which converged into a random still life, so fastened together by the hasp of color and so fixed behind the animated foreground of your talking and smiling, gesturing and pouring wine, and the camber of your shoulders, that I could feel it being painted within me, brushed on the wall of my skull, while the tone of your voice lifted and fell in its flight, and the 3 oranges remained fixed on the counter the way stars are said to be fixed in the universe. Then, all the moments of the past began to line up behind that moment, and all the moments to come assembled in front of it in a long row, giving me reason to believe that this was a moment I had rescued from the millions that rush out of sight into a darkness behind the eyes. Even after I've forgotten what year it is, my middle name, and the meaning of money, I will still carry in my pocket the small coin of that moment, minted in the kingdom that we pace through every day. Ivea. So also just want to kind of give people kind of a time. We're kind of at the edge of our kind of our usual time, but we're going to visit with Ivea and Laramie, and then we're going to come back to a conversation with Star to bring out to sort of to wrap this conversation up about the ideas which we have here. We will be continuing in future discussions, and I'm so grateful to people for sharing. So, Ivea, where does this get you thinking?
I'll try to be fast.
No, it's okay. We have time. I wasn't saying that to say like we got to rush, but I just want to sort of help people sort of realize that this conversation will come to a close, and we will be able to continue with the rest of our day. I want to be respectful to people's time, but I also want really there's so much richness here. I want to give time and the dignity of our attention to all of your ideas.
Thank you. So a lot of what this is making me think of, so many threads here that I'm connecting with as well. 2 big questions come out to me. One is, why do we practice mindfulness? In fact, if people wouldn't mind, if anybody's got answers for that, I'd love to see everybody's responses in the chat. Why do we practice mindfulness? Because I think there can be different reasons, and sometimes it can depend on different situations. And then again, it's sort of so what Rebecca and Rosa were just talking about, time here in the present, but then time on either side of that. It's about balancing those things, I think, because you don't want to do just only one or only the other. It's a balance. And so mindfulness can have different reasons for why we do it as well. Not always just one reason. And then the other question that really popped up for me is, how do we practice mindfulness? And that one ties into what I've been hearing people talking about. And Billy Joe and myself have been talking about how hard it is sometimes to be still, and was making me think of mindfulness, not necessarily always, I mean, sitting still and meditating is a wonderful practice, but there's other ways of doing mindfulness too, like when you're washing the dishes. or when you're doing something physical. If you have trouble sitting still, then it's okay to find other ways of doing that. And so what I'm trying to do mentally is gather a whole bunch of different ways of practicing mindfulness, so that way the more ideas you have of what mindfulness can look like, then the easier you can access it. So that way just mindfulness can look like a bunch of different things for different needs. And then earlier on, somebody, I think it was Bethany was mentioning in the chat something really, really wise about when you have chronic pain, sometimes focusing on somewhere that isn't hurting is better when you're doing the breathing in and breathing out, like tongue on teeth or rubbing thumb on fingers. And that really spoke to me, because when I was sitting still and when I was breathing in and out, then I have chronic pain in my body, and I don't like being aware of it all the time because it makes me distracted from my thinking. And so breathing in, I could feel the pain in my back much worse. And then being aware of my body, that made my thumbs hurt more. And so I was like, but I'd rather find that peace than the mindfulness. So that's when it's helpful to look at the purpose for mindfulness. Is if it's to be in the present moment, are there ways of doing that without letting other things also in the present distract you? Like, is there a way to be present right here without letting pain distract you, or without letting anxiety distract you? And so that's why I think it's so important to be able to have different ways. And Billy Joe had mentioned something about a powerful visualization that she has. And sometimes it's that you need a specific visualization in order to find that mindfulness, and that's okay. It's okay to have different ways of accessing that mindfulness. Just some thoughts.
It's really helpful to remember that there are a whole variety of whys and a whole variety of hows, and to try on approaches that other people have used and see what kind of works for you in that situation. Also want to note that in the chat, Matthew Helm wrote, mindfulness is escaping escapism to give time and space for our time and space. That's beautiful. Larry.
Hi, I wanted to tag on to a couple of the threads that have been circulating. One on kind of the act of remembrance as a form of mindfulness and its contribution to mental health as well. One of the things that is just kind of a personal anecdote, a personal testimony, has been the ability to look back on my nature journal, which for me is both a factual journal and a place of like reflection. So it's both and for me. And so for me, it's been a process of looking back and seeing all the ways I've changed and kind of the ecosystem of my own life as I look at these other ecosystems and these things outside of me, and realizing that that all of these things have evolved over time, and that I am remembering my own life. I'm remembering the lives of the things I've observed. And there's this continuity that brings, I think, mindfulness into the present moment, but also into the future for me. So it's also that time mentality that we were talking about a moment ago, of looking back and remembering, which can be painful in some instances. So I'm not necessarily speaking to all experiences here, but the act of remembrance, whether it's of your own things or of other things that you're observing or reading, just like the poem you shared, can really propel us into mindfulness, into the future and into the present, and give us the courage to move forward, which is just something that has helped me in my nature journaling practice. So I wanted to share.
I love how you paired those ideas of to be able to see your own change and to see your own continuity. I've thought about using the journal to see change, but you're absolutely right. It's seeing that change and the continuity of your experience. And if we can look at that and just accept and love that person who put those marks on the paper in the past, that helps us do the same for ourselves in the present. I'd like to bring Star back into our conversation. And hey there. And love to hear your thoughts on hearing these different ideas about the mindfulness and there and at the end of that, I know that in your personal that personal process that you described about how to go about um, mindful nature journaling. The last piece in what you gave us was gratitude. And I was wondering, after you share your thoughts and ideas, perhaps maybe just to bring us out with a gratitude meditation, if you felt comfortable doing that.
Sure, happy to. Absolutely. I think what is so striking to me is the beauty of this community. It just touches me every time I'm here. So, how fortunate we are. And there's a lot of diversity in the community, which is wonderful. And as people were talking, I thought it was such a great demonstration of how important it is that we know who is in our groups if we're facilitating or teaching nature journaling. So like if we have a program that's open to the public and we don't know the folks that are coming in, it probably isn't a great idea to start off with meditation. It'd be much better to read a poem or have a song or some music. Music can be very similar in its effect if it's the right music, something like that that wouldn't take people to difficult places. On the other hand, if you have a group that you work with regularly, you're going to get to know them, and you'll know if there are things, the places you can go to, the places you can't go to. You'll get to know that and then build on that, and they can take part in the planning. What do they like? What helps them center and have a good experience? But it just struck me as I was listening to the variety of responses. What a beautiful array of folks, and it's always like that. I mean, we're not that much alike that we can always go in and do the same thing. We have to be sensitive to the group that we're leading. Also, I wanted to say a little something about the past and the future, because that's so much a part. We always say mindfulness is staying in the present moment, and that's what it is. It does not exclude the past or the future. The difference is that you go to the past, like Laramie said. She said an act, and that's what I focused on, an act of remembering, an act of remembrance. So there's deliberation in that. You made a decision. I'm going to think about whatever. It could be about the land ancestors, or it could be about the hole in my boot, whatever, but I decided I'm going to think about that. Same thing with the future. I need to make a plan. I want to take the group. Actually, I'm taking my group next Tuesday on an eagle watch. So I had to make a plan. I couldn't decide to do that without thinking about the future. That is different than our mind, which is jumping all over the place and is anxious and is full of regrets. And, it's just those thoughts are in control of your time. That's a different experience. And that's when we say we're going to be mindful and stay in the present. That's what we're trying to get rid of, is that monkey mind. And I know everybody knows what that is because we all have it. It's always with practice a whole long time, and it's right there still. It's amazing. It might be helpful to make a distinction between meditation and mindfulness when we talk about these things. I think they're distinctly different. And as much as we also, we talk about different people needing different things, different approaches, different doorways into the experience. But that's also true for all of us as individuals at different times. So the way that I can practice successfully today probably isn't going to be what it's going to look like a year from now. So, and it doesn't look like what it looked like 5 years ago either. So we keep changing. And so even if your group you have a very stable group, it's good to keep checking in with them. Those are the same people and yet different people. So that was another thought I had. Maybe that's about most of what I was thinking of. Except I'll tell you, one of the things that I find very interesting about this group is I find it very hard to look at the chat and to stay present here at the same time.
It is. So I want to send out, I think Billy Joe and Vea are often in the background trying to really keep track of those things and kind of keep track of like when people are raising their hands on the group screen and all these sorts of things. It takes a village to.
It's amazing.
I mean, don't you wish though that we could just all be sitting by a fire together and having this conversation?
Yeah, well,
Rather than our screens.
I know. Someday.
Yeah. Someday.
Someday.
Thank you for those insights. We raised the point about kind of knowing your group, and how do you get to know your group? It's through mindful attention once again.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that attention changes the way in which we interact with each other and respond to
listening.
So before we wrap today, I want to thank again everybody in this community for sharing these thoughts, your wisdom, your ideas, your curiosity, your questions. I would also like to thank my co-hosts Avea Moore and Billy Joe Reed. So thank you folks so much for your support in this. This community grows because of the deliberate attention that all of you share with us. So then to close us out, what I'm going to do is we're going to join Star again, who's going to take us through a meditation, and at the end of that, it's your choice, Star, if you wish to if you wish to hit that bell one more time, and we'll just wait till that sound drops out, and then we'll be ending the meeting. Or you can just, when you are done with the meditation, you can just we can just drop into to sort of a moment of silence to let that sort of sit and settle. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your deliberate practice with us.
Oh, it's a joy. It truly is. So I will invite the bell to begin, and I'll invite the bell at the end, and everybody will be clear when we're starting and when we're finishing.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I'm going to remove my spotlight, and thank you so much for wrapping out our experience here with us.
Thank you, Jack. Empty your mind of all concerns and drop your awareness down to your heart space. Breathing in blessings, breathing out gratitude. Bring into awareness the little moments of beauty in this day. The first sip of tea or coffee, the warmth it brings. The lightening sky. A bit of music, birdsong. A flower, a tree. Someone's smile, laughter. What small moments have you experienced today that nourished your heart? Let gratitude grow within. Breathing in blessings. Breathing out gratitude. Now open your awareness to the most significant gifts you've received. The circumstances of time and place that good fortune brought you. The relationships that have shaped you. The teachings you have been blessed to receive. The suffering that has enlarged your understanding and heart. The health of body, mind, and spirit that sustains you. Let gratitude grow within. Breathing in blessings, breathing out gratitude. Gratitude growing large and small. Swelling, multiplying, nourishing. Gratitude blooming into generosity. Endless generosity of heart. Endless generosity of word. Endless generosity of thought. Endless generosity of action. Endless generosity of being. Blessings, the unending source of gratitude. Gratitude, the wellspring of generosity. Generosity overflowing into joy. Thank you, everyone.